Good evening, and welcome again to Ideas at Work and Beyond. You know, I grew up in suburban Chicago, and my Nana on my father's side, Nana Heiser, said that if you go through life with a newspaper in one hand and a Bible in the other, that you'll be able to navigate the various currents of life very well. So I was thinking about tonight's show, and I was looking at some of the headlines. I know Dave has some of the headlines. Grim forecast as our governor looks over the upcoming budget. The continued economic meltdown. Yeah, that was on The Advocate. That's our governor. This is today's paper as she addresses the state assembly. Grim forecast. People looking for answers. People wondering, where is this economic downturn going to end? Where's the bottom? Then I thought this Forbes magazine, how capitalism will save us. And I am a capitalist. I believe in free markets, and I believe that it's the best way to organize ourselves and organize markets. But the thought that capitalism is somehow going to save us, maybe economically it eventually will, but I guess for tonight's show I want to look at it a little bit deeper and go for some of the deeper answers to some of the issues that people are facing right now. And it's really gotten to be life and death. I was reading in the Wall Street Journal, his empire's in tatters, German billionaire takes life. Frankfurt, Adolf Merkel, one of Germany's wealthiest men, committed suicide after his family's business empire began unraveling amid the mounting debt his family said on Tuesday. The suicide of the 74-year-old multi-billionaire was holding the company at roughly 60 billion in euros, 40 billion in US dollars in annual revenue, is one of several deaths of business people tied to the global financial crisis. So I'm watching all this on TV, I'm reading it in the newspapers, and I'm asking myself, what is really going on here? What at the end of the day is life all about? Is it really just your investment portfolio? Is it really just the security that you have, that you live in a house and the real estate values are going up? Is it the security that you have in a 401 retirement fund? And when that gets taken away, what's left after that? And not to go too religious on you, but I started looking in the Bible, some of the answers. And Jesus talks about build your life on the rock. Because when the wind comes and the shifting and the storms hit, inevitably, if you don't have your life built on a rock, if you're built on the sand, that building's just going to wash away. So tonight, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about some of the ultimate truths, some of the issues beyond the headlines. What really matters in life? What really gives this life purpose? What are we here for anyways? And in light of this current financial meltdown that we're in the middle of, I think other people are beginning to ask some of those same questions. They're beginning to say, what is my life really based on when it gets down to it? Is it that I have a good job and have a house in a fine community, and when that gets taken away, there's really nothing left and suicide is the only option? Or is there something else? Were we built for something else? Those are some of the questions that we want to talk about. The phone number, as always, is 792-4101, 792-4101. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have your input. So the agenda is open. Don't shy away from participating. Joining me tonight on this endeavor is a good friend of mine.
Greetings.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
John DePasquale is a longtime resident of Ridgefield, Connecticut. Yeah. A member in good standing at Walnut Hill Community Church.
Sounds good.
And last time I checked, they didn't bar you from the doors. And you, at some point in your life, asked some of these questions as well. And so I invited you here tonight to sort of tell your story.
I appreciate that. Was your grandmother Nana? Was that her name?
Nana and Papa.
Well, Nana probably today would say, well, before it was the newspaper and the Bible, she said, forget the newspaper.
Yeah.
Because today, if that's all you're reading, it would lead you down kind of like a really grim road.
Here's another. Fed's outlook. This is the Wall Street Journal. Fed's outlook darkens. December minutes reveal concern for deep recession. Alcoa to cut 15,000 jobs. It goes on and on and on.
Well, you know, I'll tell you a story. I've been in the corporate world for 40 years in sales, marketing.
Yeah.
And I remember it was probably in the early 80s. I have a sales guy that worked for me, and he just left an account in Greenwich, and he came back to our office. And he said, John, you wouldn't believe it. He said, I saw a guy who had his sports car dented and went ballistic. I mean, the guy went out of his mind. And he said, why do you think that happens? And I said, Norm, I said, let's say this was your life, and it's in this hand, and all I have to do to affect your life is go like that. And that's it.
Yeah.
And as long as you have your life in the material things, anytime I touch that, I could affect you dramatically. And that's all you saw.
Yeah.
And what I'm noticing, and I'm involved with a lot of the guys at our church and outward of that, is that something that happened years ago, I don't know how it got started, but I was in the forerunning of it, is that performance and what you're worth and the money you made and the things that you did on the outside really determine your self-esteem and who you are.
Right, right.
And you know a little bit about my story, but it was from 20 to 30.
Yeah.
That's what my God was. My God was earning as much money as I could. I hung around like 5 or 6 guys, and our goal was to be the CEOs, presidents, and the owners of corporations. And we achieved a lot of that at a really early age. Most of us in our early 30s had arrived at a certain level of power within in the corporate world. And I remember, and it was not communicated to me a lot when I was young, but through my father and his work ethic, is that work gave you your value.
Right.
And your value was tied up into what you did, and that defined you. I mean, if you went somewhere and said, hey, you know, who are you? Right. You would say, I'm a painter, I'm a businessman. You would almost say who you are by what you did.
Right.
And I remember when I was 31 years old, I had the first taste of really what it meant to be threatened in that area of my life.
And when you were 30 years old?
30 years old.
30 years old. Now, you, what business were you in?
I was in, I had 2 careers. The first career was in consumer packaging. So I worked for the 3rd largest consumer packaging company in the U.S., and our accounts were the Lever Brothers, Cheeseboro Ponds, Entenmann's, Ronzoni, Kellogg's Post. And it was selling the packaging, the things that your viewers would go into the supermarket and see the boxes. That's the things that that we did.
Now, what I think, I mean, getting to your point about you are what you do, and that's why I think it's so devastating when people go through difficult economic times. Let's say they lose their job, all of a sudden, you know, their identity, what they identified with so much, is gone. That's taken away. I guess from the biblical point of view, and by the way, Jesus was not anti-work. As a matter of fact, he was very pro-work. You know, he said, do all your work heartily as if unto the Lord. Paul even said, if you don't work, you don't eat. So there's very much a Protestant work ethic that's reflected in the Bible. But at the same time, there's something more, I think, that we're not just what our accomplishments are. We aren't just what our work is, but there's something deeper. And I think sometimes when we get to the end of our line with some of these props that are holding us up, our job, our position, our kind of fast track for success, when that's taken away, you have to take another look.
I'll tell you, it's devastating.
Is that what happened to you?
Well, yeah, at 31, I had a real crash, a real breakdown. And I was at the top of my game. I was on the inner circle of a large corporation, had access to a company jet, had accounts worldwide, and all of a sudden I was given a simple task that I felt I would fail at. And no one knew that I felt I would fail at it, but I did. And it just started to have an internal shakedown. And I realized that this new task so threatened me that that nothing of my past successes business-wise was able to sustain that. So it was in the beginning at 31 of seeing this, this deception that I had put my life into fall apart from under me.
So you came off successful. I mean, not that you were successful together, but there was some sort of what task? Just out of curiosity.
Well, you would laugh, and it's really embarrassing. But it's because at that time I was one of the most productive sales managers,
right,
in a very tough market, the East Coast. I was asked to give a talk at a regional meeting regarding what was the success behind the group that I managed.
Okay.
And
so you had this pending meeting coming up, and you were going to be the speaker,
the main guy.
Okay.
As to what it was. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of black and white in my life. My life was all gray. I mean, I was able to rationalize any behavior, anything to get business.
Okay.
So here I am internally knowing that I feel like an absolute phony, because certainly it was, you have to work hard, you have to be smart, you have to all do those things. But if there's another side of you that is really in that gray area, you know, how do you really communicate that? And I remember just really going through, like, you know, lots of anxiety, lots of things that I never felt before. So I could identify in this marketplace, because that's when my bottom was hit.
Okay.
And that was the beginning. The very first time in my life at 31, I really started to seriously say, could God help me?
Wow. So up until then, God was maybe were you raised marginally in a...
Can I tell you a funny story? I had a secretary, a personal secretary, that was a strong believer in Jesus.
Okay.
And when I had this transformation, I said to her, I said, Lucille, I said, like, why didn't you ever tell me about it? And she looked at me, she said, are you kidding? You would have been the last person in the world. I would have never have risked that. Yeah, I was the last guy. I was the leader in the dark side.
Right. Well, because sometimes I think when I look at people, you know, in the Danbury area, and Milford, Bethel, Ridgefield, Fairfield County in general, the sense I get is that, hey, you know, we sort of have it together. You know, we've got our investments, we've got our cars, we've got our nice houses, we take vacations. You know, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know, this religion stuff is, well, for people that were raised on it, or people that, you know, sort of need a crutch. But, you know, I've kind of got it together.
Yeah, I just thought, okay, I'm 31.
Yeah.
I own this great...
So you're Mr. Fairfield County.
Yeah,
driving down the road, everyone...
At 31, I own this beautiful farmhouse in Ridgefield.
Okay.
We have a guest farmhouse, too, with guest quarters. I've got a great-looking wife. I've got 2 young children. From the outside, you would say this guy has it together. Right. And on the inside, I was as, you know, morally bankrupt as can be.
Wow.
You know.
Okay, so 31, you're facing this pending talk. It sort of trips you up, and all of a sudden, all this confidence trips you up, and you start looking at your life, and then what happened next?
Wow. This is an adult-rated show, right?
It's an adult-rated show.
Actually, I was feeling. I hate feelings. I mean, I think most guys are really adverse to feeling anything. Yeah. You know, that you numb yourself along the way. So all of a sudden, I started feeling feelings I never felt before, like anxiety. I was pretty much fearless up until that time, and I took my family to Florida. My folks owned the whole place right on the ocean, and I figured I'd just get away and break away. And down there, the anxiety came in so strong and the feeling so crummy that I actually started to think about taking my life. And when that started to happen, I knew I needed some help. I checked myself into a hospital just as if I was burnt out. And there was my first encounter with what I would consider a spiritual encounter with God. Wow. In a hospital room, yeah.
So it had gotten to that point where you needed help?
Yeah, and it happened over a 90-day period. I mean, I could relate to the guys right now who are facing loss. I had a mortgage, and I had expenses. I had all these things, and I was looking at, there was just no way that in my state of mind could I go on continuing that. Wow. And
so was it not being able to meet your responsibilities? Was it
yeah, it was a whole idea of failing. It was a personal failure, and that I weighed myself, and failure needed to be punished, and I was just going to punish myself, take myself out.
Wow. Well, I mean, you know, when you look at some of the headlines that we looked at already here, I would say that, you know, those feelings, and people have actually acted on those feelings, are not hugely uncommon.
No,
you know?
and there's another dimension, and we can get that to the... If there's spiritual light, if there's a light side, there has to be a dark side. There's always two things. So there is a dark side that once we start to go down that road, we do get some help from the dark side to really continue. But I remember in that hospital room, Will had made up the decision to do that, and my dad, who we weren't close, but he came in, and of all things, he brought an antique crucifix. And he had carried it like a Lucky Charm, and that's his culture, that he came out of it. And he said, John, this has been really lucky for me. Maybe just go to sleep with it.
Wow.
And I remember looking at this antique crucifix and looking at Jesus crucified and saying, oh, Jesus, if only you were alive, could you help me?
Wow.
And that night, I slept, and I had the most vivid of... it was more than a dream. I really, because it was so real, I believed it was real. And it was that I did take my life, but there certainly wasn't peace on the other side. There was the anxiety I had multiplied, but with one caveat: it was forever.
Wow.
And I remember waking up like at 3 in the morning, you know, sopping wet from just fear, and just looking at the cross, and I said, you took away my option. You took away my option. And at that moment, I knew that that was the other side, and I had to do whatever it took to get well.
Wow.
And I had an idea that Jesus had something to do with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is incredible. Is there a happy ending at the end of the story? I know, it seems like, because you see. I guess that's what I want this show to be about a little bit. You know, we're looking at some of these tough financial times, tough things people are going through, and hopefully, you know, a silver lining, if you will, of this whole thing is that people are taking a moment to reflect. Well, what is my life really about?
I've got to be for sure.
Oh, okay.
Made it up.
Yeah, they put up the R rating.
That's good.
R for religious. That's
right.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know for sure if there's somebody that tuned into this, it's not by accident. There's no accidents. And at that time in my life, I had foggy thinking. I mean, it was irrational. It wasn't straight, and I was looking for an exit. When people think about taking their life or doing stupid things, what really has happened is they have no options, and that's the only option that's come up.
Right.
And it starts by a simple prayer of, you know, God, if you're out there, help me. And that's where it started for me. You know, I knew that God had something to do with it. And over the next 15 months, just really the right people with the right message started to come into my life, and I would say I was totally receptive. Up until that time, you couldn't talk to me an inch about anything spiritual.
Yeah.
But now I had a need. I saw, you know, that all my success, all the money I had, I mean, at 24 years old.
Flying on private jets.
Private jets. I mean, I would fly in with the president. We'd land at Teterboro, and I'd make up my mind and say, all right, do I want to go home or go into Manhattan? I'd say, I want to go to Manhattan. And there were a few times that we had limousines into Manhattan. I mean, it was like, it was too much at too young with a guy that had no moral compass. And so, but I knew, you know, that side of it, and it had no joy. It couldn't sustain me when it started to crumble inside. So I had to find something sustainable.
Now, this is the part where I think people have questions, because you know, here you are, a successful businessman. You have these doubts. It actually spirals into, you know, thoughts of suicide, and now Christ enters the picture. And I think for some people, they kind of wonder, what do you mean Christ enters the picture? What does that mean? Is it just that you would pray and give your concerns to someone and it made you feel better? Or was it actually a personal relationship with Christ? Or what does this look like?
Well, I think from what I know now, and I've surely have spoken to lots of guys along the way, it's a little bit different for everybody, but there is one defining moment that's kind of like common for everything. I remember in this 15-month journey, the first thing I said was, the things that I was doing were wrong. Now, instinctively, I mean, I wasn't a religious guy at all, but I knew there were certain behaviors and certain things I was doing that was absolutely wrong. So I immediately stopped that. And that made a lot of people real angry with me.
You know, sometimes people will say that goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, where they talk about, you know, hold on one second, we have a caller. Yeah, caller, you're on the air?
Hello, yes?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes.
Thanks for calling.
My question is very simple.
Yes.
If I have $500 million to give away to some organization, do you believe if I were to give this money to the ones who need the money, do you believe I would enter the kingdom of heaven?
Wow.
Well,
that is a very good question. I was in preparation for tonight. I was looking up this parable. Can I read you this parable real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's a parable of the rich young ruler. And basically it's Jesus talking, and it says, he says, therefore everyone who hears my words of mine and acts upon them, they can be compared to the wise man who has built his house upon the rock. And the rains descend, and the floods come, and the winds blow, and burst against the house, and yet it did not fall, for he had founded upon the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them is like the foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and burst against the house, and great was its fall. So I guess the answer really is not if you give the money, you'll go to heaven. If you don't, you won't. But what is your life built on? Is it built on the rock of having a relationship with Christ, or is it built on the satisfaction of having money and that sort of thing?
Well, I am like Joseph of Arimathea. I am like Joseph of Arimathea, the rich Judean, the one from Judah, the one who was Jesus' secret disciple, the one Jesus loved the most. He loved them more than the 12 one. It was his private disciple, and he was from Judea. He was not a J-E-W, he was a Judean. And he was the one, when Joseph of Arimathea, the question was asked by Joseph of Arimathea, how do I enter the kingdom of heaven? And then the answer was, you should love your God with all your heart and your mind. At that spur of the moment, the question was about to be fulfilled when Jesus said, your neighbor. And Mary Magdalene appeared. And now they understand, for you to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to love your God with all your heart and all your mind. And the second part is to love your brother as yourself. Because the camel cannot enter the needle eye unless it's built you right on the foundation of the spirituality of Jesus Christ.
You know, I think you hit. There's a verse that you alluded to there. It said, "How hard it is for the wealthy to enter the kingdom of heaven, for it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God."
There you go.
There you go. Now, you know, I looked into that a little bit, and back in this time when the Bible was written, they would have walled cities. And there would be caravans that would go through the desert, but when the sun went down, they would close the main gate to the city. And so if your caravan came in after the sun had gone down, there was no way to get into the walled city except for a small door at the back. It was a door built for humans to go through. And for a camel, now get this symbolism, for a camel to go through that door, which was referred to as the eye of the needle.
Where did you get that story?
The camel would have to get down on its knees.
Get that story.
The camel would have to take off everything it was carrying.
Like Jesus asked, where did you get that story?
I got
three wise men said, he's king of the Jews. So they told Herod, who they were looking for already. They already told Herod. When the three wise men say, so I'm asking you, just like where Jesus asked Pontius, where did you get that story you're saying now?
Well, let me finish the story, and then I'll tell you where I picked it up.
You did what?
But let me tell you. Let me finish the story.
Where did you get the story?
I'm actually not sure. I think I was told it.
You see now, there you go. It's like you're asking me, Abraham. He was living in the land of Abraham, and he had all the laws to follow by Hammurabi. All our basic laws in America is based on ethics and morals based by a black king called Hammurabi. He had the laws, and Abraham couldn't obey those laws. He had to go into a land where he could live.
Okay.
So that's
hold the phone 1 second, because I agree with you one thing. Jesus didn't have blue eyes, that's for sure.
But blue eyes have to do with here.
I know.
We know wool here. We know straight here, we know Douglas here. There are three types of hair. There's a woolly hair, and everything came off the woolly hair. We know that through Harvard University. We know through DNA that everything came off the seed where there's fresh water, fresh air, and fresh fruit. We know
Okay.
that through DNA. We don't have to go through that biblical field again. We know through DNA a man will end up in prison.
I got another caller, but thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
You don't face facts.
Thanks a lot.
That's wrong. That is wrong what you're doing.
Thanks. Continuing with what I'm doing wrong, the story of the Eye of the Needle was that when the caravan would come across the desert, the only way for the camel to get through the Eye of the Needle was that the camel got down on its knees, unpacked what it had. It had to be pulled in by the head, pushed in from behind, and that's how the camel could get through the Eye of the Needle.
Neat.
So anyways, that's a verse.
Story.
I thought, yeah, I mean, and that's just one form of the interpretation. But anyways, okay, so here you are, you're successful in business, you had this moment in your life, and then you turned your life. Well, explain how that works.
Well, the process was I really had to come to the end of myself to think that I could somehow save. I reached in and there was nothing there.
Right.
And that was the key, that it wasn't going to be something I could do. And it was people. I mean, God uses people to come into my life, and slowly but surely, as I turned away from the things I did that were really crummy, I started to go back to church, but with listening ears, just to hear more. And then it was at a business meeting in September of 1977. I was running a meeting, and Cheeseboro Ponds was one of our largest accounts, and I was doing a seminar. And during the break time, which we had a dinner set up at the cocktail hour, a young guy came up to me and started to share what I would know as the gospel. I didn't know it was the gospel, but he started to share with me what was the purpose of living. And then during the conversation, and this is, I'm drinking ginger ale now, and he said, "What if you died right now? Where would you go?" Wow. And I said, "I'd probably go to hell." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. Well, where would you go?"
Okay.
And he said, "Heaven." And I said, well, how do you know you're going to heaven and I'm going to hell? And he said, well, obviously, he said, well, Jesus died for you. And I said, well, I thought he died for everybody. He says, yeah, but you have to believe that for yourself. And as I was saying, believing that he died for me personally, I knew in my mind as I was running through it that I had never done what he was saying. And as he was talking, the words that I heard basically is that, do I trust him that he died for my sins, and have I accepted that and invited him into my life? And I looked at him and I said, I've never done that, but could I? Yeah. And so in the middle of this meeting that I'm running, he said, yeah, come with me. We walked out of the Marriott in Stamford, went to his parked car, and I never met the guy before, first time in my life, and he said, repeat this prayer. And I was such a willing candidate, because two things. One is that I knew God was part of it. I knew that I never did what he was saying, which is to pray. And I said, Father, I believe Jesus is your son. I believe he died for my sins. And I said, I believe he died for me. Please help me. Take my life. Wow. And that night, I got home about 11 o'clock, and my wife was sleeping. And she had gone through a lot. She saw me as this really energetic guy, then this period of confusion. And I said, Rita, I woke her up and I said, I want you to know I just made Jesus the Lord of my life. And she said, well, that's great. Let's talk about it in the morning. And it was a dramatic change from there.
Wow. Caller, you on the air? Is a caller here?
Maybe this one?
I don't know. Caller, you on the air? Hello? Okay. Wow. So that was the
beginning. And what really was neat is that was on a Thursday, and so Sunday the church I was going to, and it was the church of my youth. I was going back to a church that when I knew I was a kid. I remember in the back pew, kind of like waiting for him to show up.
Right.
And sure enough, is that during the service, I said, it just felt like this vacuum cleaner, gust of wind hit me, and it felt like all the garbage was just lifted out. And when I walked out of that church, I would say who walked in was a relatively still nervous guy. Who walked out was somebody entirely different. I really felt an inner strength that I didn't have before, and I knew that something had come in me. Which later on I found out to be is that when you receive Christ, you receive the Holy Spirit. I didn't know that, but I really felt the difference of empowerment.
So not a religious guy, not kind of a fanatical.
Not at all.
But you came to a point in your life where you knew You needed to make a decision.
Jesus wasn't religious, I don't think.
No, he hung out with tax gatherers and sinners. On that note, we're going to break for weather, news, and the sports, and I promise to get you the score of the Florida-Oklahoma game. Don't switch over there. Stay right here, and we'll get that score too. But we're going to take a quick break for the young men with the weather.
Now covering Danbury, Bethel, and Ridgefield local news with Austin Greenfield and weather with meteorologist Jared Root, right here on Comcast Channel 23.
And hello everyone, and welcome to the news and weather portion of Ideas at Work and Beyond. I'm Austin Greenfield alongside meteorologist Jared Root.
Thank you.
And we had a pretty nasty ice storm this past Tuesday night, and we're going to be showing you pictures as I read the story. People in Danbury, New Fairfield, and parts of Reading could still be without electricity Thursday evening after a winter storm dumped about a half an inch of sleet and ice on the region Wednesday, officials from Connecticut Light and Power said. CLNP officials were scheduled to hold an emergency conference call at 10 p.m. Wednesday to figure out how they would tackle the many trees and wires down in Newtown. At 10:30 p.m., CLNP was still saying parts of the area would remain without power until Thursday evening. In all, about 12,000 people were without power Wednesday night during a storm that had little impact on the rest of the state. It was definitely a little worse than predicted, according to meteorologist Gary Lesor, Assistant Director of the Weather Center at Western Connecticut State University. We didn't get as much sleet and snow as we thought, but rather freezing rain and ice. In Newtown, nearly 2,000 people were without electricity Wednesday. Newtown Middle School on Queen Street opened Wednesday night for residents without heat, Forrest said. William Halstead, the town's Emergency Management Director, was bringing cots, pillows, and blankets to the middle school in case anyone wanted to stay overnight. Wires were down all over town, including West Street, Poverty Hollow Road, Button Shop Road, Head Meadow Road, and Hattertown Road. Route 302 between Bethel and Newtown was also closed due to downed wires. And now, Jared, we go from snow to sleet to ice and back to snow for Saturday. Explain.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to, we're not going to melt all that much ice off these trees because tomorrow is going to remain below freezing. The sun might melt some of it, but it's going to stay on the trees. But Saturday, especially Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and into Sunday, Austin, we're going to have to deal with some more wintry weather, this time more in the snow variety. Let's get to our details of the almanac for today. We had a high temperature of 34 degrees and a low temperature, which is actually going to occur later tonight because our temperatures are currently dropping well below what they were this morning. So our low temperature will actually occur right at 11:59 and 59 seconds, you could say. Well, last I checked, our temperature was 28 degrees and it's falling currently. And we had trace of precipitation today. We saw those snow showers going through. And there's actually a few snow showers lingering around, but those are slowly dying down as we go into the night. Our weather headlines for tonight are the following. We're going to have to bundle up for tonight. We have very cold temperatures for tonight. So if you're heading out, make sure you have your heavy coat, scarf, your hat, gloves, whatever you need just to stay warm. Just bundle up tonight. Tomorrow we have a quiet and chilly Friday ahead. but plenty of sunshine around, so it's going to be actually a nice day, but just a little chilly and quiet, so it's still have that jacket handy. And again, as I said earlier, we have more snow for the weekend. We'll have more details in the 5-day forecast. For tonight, we'll have mostly cloudy skies, cold temperatures, lows in the upper teens, 16 Bethel, 19 Danbury, and 17 in Ridgefield. For your Friday, we'll have mostly sunny skies, chilly temperatures, and breezy. High temperatures only around 30 Bethel, 31 Danbury, and 31 in Ridgefield. Our 5-day forecast, we have snow breaking out Saturday afternoon. I'm gonna say it's gonna be between the mid to late afternoon hours, say 3-4 o'clock. Temperatures only in the upper 20s, 28 Saturday. These are high temperatures. That snow is going to continue overnight, moderate to heavy at times, and I think right now it looks like when all said and done with this system, we'll have between 4 and 7 inches of snow. That system clears out for mid to late morning Sunday. We could see some peaks of sunshine in the afternoon. High temperatures still cold in the upper 20s, 29 on Sunday, and we have a nice sunny day for Monday, 30 degrees. And Tuesday we have a cold front coming in to give us a few snow showers in the afternoon, but it should not be anything like we're going to deal with on Saturday. High temperature on 34 degrees. In Austin, after Tuesday, I see temperatures not even getting out of the teens for your high temperatures during the day, in single-digit numbers for your low temperatures. Looks like mid to late next week. So we're going to have to get ready for even more wintry weather as we go into next week. Well, that does it for the news and weather. When we return, we'll join our program.
Welcome back to Ideas at Work and Beyond. It would appear that it's going to be a frigid cold next week, so bundle up. But you know, it's January. It's supposed to be cold, you know. Yeah, we have a caller. Caller, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I got taken away with all the history of...
that's okay. You had a quick question.
Yeah, the question is, what do I do with this $500 million can I buy my way into heaven? What do I do? Do I make a television show?
Good.
Do I do the program?
What's
do I
his
have
name?
the poor?
Good question.
How do I buy myself my way into heaven?
Got it. Thanks for the question. Yeah, you got to answer that?
Great question, great question. And
$500 million?
Yeah, it's easier than that. And a matter of fact, Jesus had the same question. In the Garden of Gethsemane, and who was called his name? Remember?
I forget.
Okay. Well, I know you're listening out there. So in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus knew what laid ahead of him. And he actually said to his Father 3 times, you know, he said, Father, can this cup pass? Meaning, can I not go to the cross? And he asked 3 times. And the God of the universe looked past, present, future, and he didn't come up with, gee, you know, if there's a guy out there with $500 million, he'll get the pass. He said, no, Jesus, I mean, there's no other way but you. And he said that 3 times. So if the God of the universe said to his own son, who would certainly want to spare him of what lied ahead, that there was no other way, that Jesus made the way on the cross. And I think that John 3:16, that for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, so whoever believeth in him would not perish but have everlasting life, which means it's for everyone, not someone who is wealthy or someone not enough money. And it's not a worldly system. It's a system of just trusting in Christ for the whole deal.
There's a illustration that I learned. It sort of outlines really the whole Christian faith. And to answer that gentleman's question, I thought I would, go over it. But essentially, I don't know if you can get a shot of this, but really all basic world religions have something like this, that man had a relationship with God. And then something came and broke that relationship. That's what all major world religions will start with. And so basically you have man over here on this side, and there's a chasm, and there's God over here, and there's a separation. Now I think what the gentleman was talking about was, what does man need to do to bridge this gap?
Yeah.
What can we do? And there's different verses in the Bible. There's one, Ephesians, it says, for by grace we have been saved through faith.
A gift.
Not of ourselves, but a gift from God, not a result of works. So I think sometimes man over here tries to bridge this gap through being religious, let's say. If I only do a tour to Mecca, or if I only, like sometimes you see in Tibet, people that would climb the mountain or something like that. Or they'll say, what if, like this gentleman said, what if I do good works?
Give away money, yeah.
Give away money to the poor. Will that bridge the gap? But the essence of all world religions is, what does man have to do to get to God? What do I have to do? Just tell me. Who do I have to give money to? But really, in the final analysis, Christianity is not what man does to get to God, but it's what God did to get to man. And then this is how this illustration ends, with essentially the cross. And that it wasn't what man did to get to God, but it's what God did to get to man in sending his son to die on the cross. So anyway, to answer that gentleman's question, I think that's it. Giving stuff, being religious, that's not going to get it done.
No.
But the good news is that Christ so loved the world that he gave his son, so no longer is there that bridge, that gap.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay,
there's a
back
practical side of that too.
Uh-huh.
And the practical side is that, okay, what does it look like after that happens?
Yeah.
And for the person who not accidentally has turned this on, and maybe is, up losing a job, or has, overextended and things don't look good, what does receiving Christ look like? And for me, when that happened, there's a psalm that says, he guides you on the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. All of a sudden, there are paths and there are directions that start to open up that never opened up before. And they're good directions. And there's a sense of a knowing. And particularly, God puts people in your life. And before you know it, you start to feel yourself on this right track. And the things that you couldn't do for yourself are now happening in front of you. And it's a remarkable kind of a journey. And the key thing that I think that for Guy, it's more of a guy problem than for women. Women don't have too much of a problem with the surrender issue of turning their life over. I mean, you think about it, when a woman gets married to a guy, in most cases, what she's saying is, okay, you're the guy, you're the head. I'm really submitting myself to you. In general, I'm not saying that's for all women, but most women are making a major, they lose their name. We don't lose our name. But for a guy to surrender to an unknown entity, being Jesus, that's the tough part. And so the entry into this spiritual walk is trusting Christ and doing that. That's opening the door. The rest of it is the process of surrender. Maybe if your business is a shambles, it's easy to surrender something in shambles, and the things that you're strong in, it's harder to let go. The idea is that God's got a better way. He's got a better way for every aspect of your life, and the more you surrender those parts, the better the outcomes, and it reflects in your mind, your attitude. in everything. Your life is no longer, like you said earlier, built on sand. It's really built on rock.
Yeah. Okay, so when they were just asking, how do you spell your last name? Your viewing audience wants to know. D-E, right?
P-A-S-Q-U-A-L-E.
All right. John D. Pasquale.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what you said when you met this guy, it was at a business conference at the hotel. You went out and you prayed.
In his car, yeah, he
now,
led me.
There's a verse in the Bible in Revelations that says, "Behold, I stand at your heart's door and knock.
Yeah.
If any man hears my voice and opens the door."
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to? Was that the experience?
Yeah, yeah, and if it's interesting, you know, I've now looked at pictures that have that. You know, there's no knob on the outside of the door. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
Yeah.
But next time you look at one of those pictures, the knob is on the inside. So it's really, you have to open the door.
Okay.
And God's not going to kick it in on you. I mean, you have to open the door.
Okay.
And I would be as realistic as saying is that, you know, you could even, in matters when it comes to the heart and the spirit and your soul, you could even say, God, you know, I want to be willing to open the door. Please make me willing. I mean, God really just wants a willing heart.
And so that's basically the decision. Almost like on this bridge illustration, you'll notice that man is still over here. I don't know if we can get a shot of that, but can you get on this? Yeah. Man is still over on this side, and it's really up to us to make that decision to walk over.
Right.
You know, and make that decision to walk across. It's up to you. I mean, like you say, that when Christ is knocking at our heart's door, He's not kicking it in.
Right.
It's up to us to make that decision. Salvation is a gift. We need to receive that gift. There was a movie with Jim Carrey in it, God Almighty, I think it was, and it was as if God could do anything but force you to love Him. You know, God could do anything but force you to love
Bruce
Him.
Almighty.
Oh, Bruce Almighty. Thank you. It just came to me. That was a good point. What we're talking about. It's really up to you to make that decision.
And that's the interesting thing. Is I had somebody ask me one time, who I was talking to at a meeting in Florida, and he said, "Why do people who know Jesus have so much passion for Him?"
Right.
And I said, "You know, when someone has taken the hit for you, let's say, you know, that I was found guilty of something, and I was supposed to get 30 or 40 whips for my guilt, and I lived in some kind of obscure village.
Right.
But just prior to getting up and having that done to me, which would maybe kill me, someone stands in my place and says no, or covers me, and just puts himself around me and takes the hit. Well, you know, anyone who takes the hit for you and dies, you know, in that process, there's a great reverence you have for that. So it's kind of like the reverence comes from the fact of what Jesus did for us. I mean, he left heaven. He left the greatest place in the world to come to planet Earth to do two things. One, to, you know, reflect who God was, and to make a way, that bridge, make a way to heaven. I should say one more thing? Sure. I was doing a little thing on Christmas about how do you keep Christ in Christmas. And I went to Pratt Institute for Industrial Design, and we had to learn a lot about bridges.
Right.
And the Brooklyn Bridge was built by the Roeblings, like in 1870, and it connected Manhattan to Brooklyn.
Right.
And actually, Roebling's wife was the one that really helped do it.
Okay.
He got injured, and so she managed the whole process. And so they allowed her to walk over that bridge.
Okay.
And it's just like Bethlehem in heaven, where you got like your Manhattan in Brooklyn. Okay. Bethlehem and heaven were connected with a bridge. And the bridge was Christ. And He was the first one. When He died and was raised from the dead, He was the first one that made it over that bridge. And because He went over the bridge, it's almost like that saying that the Son of God became the Son of Man, so that the sons and daughters of man can become the sons and daughters of God.
Wow.
And it's so simple. As a matter of fact, do I have another minute?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
there's just some questions coming in by
just
email.
one more minute. My dad,
No, take your time.
about three years after my first encounter with Christ, my dad and I were talking then in Florida, and my father said, you know, just man isn't good enough. It has to be something that man does. So I said, well, what about Jesus? He died on the cross for you. He says, no, it has to be Jesus plus something. So I prayed real quick, and I said, Dad, what if you paid someone 20 grand to paint your house? And at that time, a great paint job would have been $5,000. And I said, let's say you pay 20 grand for the best painter of your house to paint it.
Right.
And after he was all done, and you're in the painting business,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
I can relate to this.
After he was all done, you were out there touching up.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you saw him from a distance as you were touching up. What would you be communicating to him?
Yeah.
And my dad said that I rejected his work.
Wow.
And I said, that's it. I said, anything you add to the cross, what you're saying is you're rejected the work of Christ, that you have to add to it.
Wow.
And he looked at me, and it was like a light went on. He goes, oh, my God. I said, do you want to pray just to receive Christ as is? And he did. We prayed, and he prayed. The next morning, at coffee, at the table, looking over the beautiful ocean, he looked at me, and he said, John, it was so simple, I almost missed it. And that's the key to the gospel. It's so simple, you could miss it.
Questions are coming in via email. Let's see. Does it matter if I'm sexy? Can I go to heaven?
Sure.
That's his term. Does it matter if I'm sexy? I mean, sex really, God sort of thought it up.
Yes,
you know?
he did.
So he made us sexual beings. I'm not sure what this writer's talking about. What was your response to that?
That's different. That's different.
Does it matter if I'm sexy? Can I go to heaven?
Yeah.
What's your answer?
Yes, you could go to heaven. As long as you believe in Christ, you could go to heaven. He might change your desire of being sexy, but you need to put him first.
All right. I have a theory about sex along those lines. I think that God intended sex to be enjoyed between a man and a woman in the context of marriage.
Yes.
Where you're committed to each other relationally, and that's an expression of that. And that's really the best sex. Yeah. That's my theory.
He actually makes it better. Matter of fact, I saw an article where it says that, and they didn't know how to present it other than it was, I think, Time magazine did a survey, and they found out that women who were religious, which probably meant spiritual, rated off the charts their sexual life versus people who had no faith.
Really?
There's a marked difference. Oh, yeah, marked difference.
See, Billy Joel would say the opposite in that song.
Well, that's not true. That's
not true. Catholic girls aren't much too late. I'd rather laugh with the sinners and cry with the saints. I never liked that song. Because I think it's the opposite.
It is the opposite.
Just real quick, you talked about those comparisons about Christ dying on the cross and what that means. Oh, geez, more questions are coming in. What that means, hold on, let's see. What if I'm a movie star? Can I go to heaven?
Yeah, it's the same guy who's a sexy movie star.
Sexy movie star.
Yes,
I would say yes. There's a place in heaven for everyone.
Yes.
But the point, the analogy.
Can I just say one thing? It's not really, and maybe for the fellow if he's listening, and obviously he is. It's not who you are. It's who you know. And it's like and be very, very, very. We're kidding around a lot, but one thing Jesus said, he said at the end of the time, when you face Jesus, he'll say, depart from me, I never knew you. And what he really means is he never knew you, meaning that he never had a relationship with you. And so receiving Christ into your life, making him a part about it, it's not about who you are, if you're sexy or if you're a Hollywood star, it's who do you know. And if you know Jesus, you're really in, because Jesus says, then he wouldn't say, depart from me, I never knew you. He'd say, hey, welcome, I've known you forever.
But really, in your story, when you talked about it, where at 31 you were successful, but you came to this point where you had this feeling of emptiness, even to the point of suicide, but then you made a decision and you gave your life to Christ.
Yeah.
It wasn't that you gave mental assent. Yes, I believe in God. Like you might say, well, I believe in Benjamin Franklin or something. I believe he was a historical figure that lived. But it's really given your whole life over. Yeah. Well, everything you know about yourself to everything you know about Christ.
You ask really good questions, and you really position it so well, because Jesus said that you profess with your lips and you believe in your heart. And biblically, your heart is the seed of the seat of all your emotions, your intellect, but it's your heart. It's like your basic core.
Right.
And when I received him with my heart, it was a cry of my heart. It wasn't a cry of my head. Right. And that's another kind of issue, is a lot of guys detach from their head and their heart. So even asking God to help you to be able to get into contact with your heart, would be a good step.
There was a story I once heard about a famous tightrope walker named Blondini. And Blondini set up his tightrope across Niagara Falls. And every day there would be a group of people that would come out and watch the great Blondini walk across this tightrope on Niagara Falls. He had one of those big poles and everything. But famous guy, as a Frenchman. And one day Blondini came to the tightrope and he said to the crowd, he said, "Do you believe I can walk across this tightrope pushing a wheelbarrow?" And they said, "You're the great Blondini. We believe in you. We're sure you can do it." So he put the tightrope on there and he walked across with the falls crashing right next to him flawlessly.
Yeah.
Then Blondini came back to the crowd and said, "Do you believe I can walk across this tightrope with 100 pounds of sand in the wheelbarrow?" And he said, "Blondini, you're the best. We believe in you." So he did it with 100 pounds of sand in the wheelbarrow flawlessly, walking across the tightrope. Finally, on the last day, Blondini came to that same crowd and said, "Do you believe I can walk across this tightrope over Niagara Falls, pushing a wheelbarrow with a person in the wheelbarrow?" And this guy said, "Yes, I believe in you." And Blondini pointed to him and said, "Okay, get in the wheelbarrow." And really, I think that when you talk about becoming a Christian, that's really what it means.
Yeah.
It means, you know, I'm committed. I'm going to make a decision here. And I'm going to give everything I know about myself to everything I know about you. And then when you start seeing headlines like, "Is capitalism going to save us?" When you start seeing headlines like, "Grim forecast," when you start seeing other people that are deciding that, you know, without their portfolio intact, it's not even worth living, committing suicide, you can say, "No, I've made a decision. I've gotten in the wheelbarrow. And I'm basing the rest of my life, as long as the Lord gives me breath, on Him and having a relationship with Him." And it gives you a stability and a purpose, and it's what you were created to be.
Without a doubt.
And anyways, I appreciate very much you coming in.
Hey, it's great.
Thank
Really
you very
great.
much.
Thank you so
I know
much.
it's can we get that little R for religion up on the screen there, because we went a little religious here. Appreciate it very much. This is Ideas at Work and Beyond. And I think during these difficult economic times, there are ideas that are coming from the economists, but I'll be honest with you, I've talked to CEOs of some of the companies you would recognize if I said it. And I said, what's going on, what's going to happen next? They don't know. Politicians, they're not sure what's going to happen next. But I don't know what the future holds, but I do know who holds the future. And so thank you for taking the time to at least look at some of these other things. Join us next week. It may be a show on Young Life. We also have Robert Vaughn coming in later this month. And we have a pretty exciting show on the Danbury Mad Hatters hockey team. You'll want to see that. You get some behind-the-scenes view of that. So please join us. The score is 7-7, Florida, Oklahoma, and it's halftime. So you can see the second half starting now. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Ideas at Work and Beyond. Good night.